Hey guys, welcome back. So in advance, I want to apologize for the wind. It's really windy today, so there might be some wind noise in the background. Today I wanted to talk about Sig rifles. Sig has historically been known for building extremely high quality firearms. Going back to their original founding, they have produced some of the world's best handguns and rifles, as evidenced by this PE90 that I'm holding in my hands right now, which is a Swiss-made Sig rifle. These things are very well known and very well accepted to be among some of the best military rifles of the 20th century. So the PE90, Sig 550, 550A1, and all the different variations, what's called the Sig 500 series of rifles, are extremely well made. Even though they made extensive use of stampings, as you can tell by the example I'm holding here right now, the quality is just absolutely impeccable. And so Sig has gone through a bit of an evolution, where Sig manufactured primarily in Europe for many years. We've now seen Sig USA really become the dominant force in the Sig empire, if you will. So Sig USA is now supplying firearms to the world's law enforcement, civilians, and military. And we want to talk about the evolution of the Sig indigenous rifles. Sig has built AR-15s and things like that, and that's not what the topic of this video is. I want to talk about Sig designed rifles. We're going to start off in the storyline talking about an exquisite piece of military history like this PE90, move into some of their not so amazing designs that came about in the 2000s, and then talk about where we are today with a rifle that I think is a world-class rifle on par with this. So let's get started with today's video. We're going to start off shooting the PE90 with some Federal 223. This is 55 grain ammunition, and Federal supplies this ammo to the channel for free. We'd like to thank them for supporting the channel in doing that. It would be our highest recurring cost. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and charge up the PE90 here and do a little bit of shooting with her. The wind's blown over our 100-meter target, so we'll just sit here and do a little bit of shooting at 50, but it'll give you an idea of what this elegant girl looks like and how she functions. I mean, just look at this rear sight. The diopter sight's just gorgeous with the white markings, the letterings, the gray finish, the side folding stock. Just an amazing piece of military history. Very beautiful rifle. Take note that it has a reciprocating charging handle that is not reversible, and that'll become something we'll talk about here in a moment. But yeah, just a great rifle. So beautiful and highly desired here in the United States. So Sig USA knew the popularity of this rifle, so Sig USA attempted to make their own version of this rifle for the US market. Let's take a look at an example of one of those. So we talked about this absolute beauty, the PE90. Well, Sig in 2007 decided, Sig USA, that they wanted to make a version of this rifle for the US market, but they didn't want to import the parts from Switzerland. They wanted to make everything right here in the United States. And so they began development of this. Now, this is the Sig Pistol. This is actually the firearm that made famous the original SB Tactical Sig brace. I've since replaced the original brace on it with this later version of the SB Tactical brace. But this handgun was also originally produced as a rifle when it was released. And the rifle, when it came out in 2007, didn't meet with much success in the market. And I think there was a number of different reasons for that. People desperately wanted one of these, but what Sig brought out was an abomination. It had what we jokingly call the shark skin front handguard. It looked nothing like the original PE90 handguards. It had an AR-15 stock on it versus the Sig style stock. It just did not look the part. It was Americanized. It was changed so much that people were turned off by it. It was not aesthetically pleasing. It's not what people wanted. And Sig realized that, and they started to evolve the product line to where it started to resemble more the original PE90 Sig 550. And so it started to gain a little bit more traction, but Sig still struggled with quality problems. The early guns, I remember vividly, I've owned them, and this is the only one I've kept. The rails that they put on top were oftentimes canted on the receiver, and you couldn't zero the gun. They would have horrible fitment issues, wildly inaccurate. And some people will say that they'll swear up and down that their Sig 5.56 rifle or pistol is the most accurate gun they've ever shot, but I've shot a lot of these. I even owned the DMR at one time, and at best it was a 4-inch gun with match ammunition. Horribly inaccurate. They all worked, including this one, but it just didn't seem to catch on. Sig ultimately went on to clone the PE90, and this is an example of that. I did a video on this rifle many years ago. I've had to use, epoxy to get the handguards to stop from rattling. Had to epoxy the thing because it feels like an airsoft toy. It was just horribly constructed, but as you can see, it has that same color finish. It simulates the stamped original lower, even though it's a machined lower, which Sands actually went ahead and started machining aluminum lowers too, so they moved away from the stampings from the original guns. But it has the look of the original rifle. Unfortunately, this thing is reliable, but it has this ugly 1913 rail across the top. It has the diopter sight that clamps to the rail, but once again, this rifle at best is a 4-minute gun with match ammunition. I put an ACOG on this thing and was so horribly frustrated with the horrible inaccuracy of it that I just gave up on it, and it's become a collector's piece. And ultimately, Sig would completely discontinue the 5.56 series of rifles. I don't know if it was because of waning sales, they weren't inexpensive, if it was quality issues, or if they were just ready to move on. But the guns had people that loved them, and then there were people like me that thought, Sig, what are you doing? This is not what we wanted. We wanted a Swiss quality rifle, and we didn't get that. So Sig did move on. This product line would become obsolete. It's now no longer supported by Sig. Sig many times will do that. They'll build something for a while, like the 250 pistol, and if it doesn't get traction in the market, they'll just completely abandon it. It'll become a dead product line, and they'll move on to something like the 320. The 320 is a P250 with a striker assembly versus a double action, single action hammer. And that's what they did with the 5.56 series of weapons. They just abandoned them and moved on. Let's take a look at the next rifle in the evolution of the 5.56 that would lead to the demise of the entire product line. So Sig would take what they learned with the 5.56 series of firearms, and they would evolve into what they called the XI. Now, both the 5.56 and the XI were chambered in 5.56, and alternatively, they were available in the 7.62x39, which they called the R model. So you had a 5.56R for Russian, and then you had the 5.56, and then you had the R version of the XI, which this one is. Now, I've had very little interest in the 5.56 versions of these guns, but every time they came out with them in 7.62x39, I wanted to buy them because I loved the caliber and I thought it would be cool. And every single time I was let down, and I've owned multiple of these and none of them worked right. The 5.56Rs, the 7.62x39, seem to have more problems than the 5.56 counterparts. Just bad designs, like an aluminum shelf in here that would quickly erode if you use steel magazines, which they would later fix. And that's another problem I don't want to get too deep into, where Sig has constant rolling changes, what I would call generational changes, but they don't increment the nomenclature of the gun, so you have no idea what version of the gun you're buying when they've made serious changes to fix serious problems. So the XI came about, and this thing is just ugly as sin. But they thought it was an improved version over the original 5.56 because now you could take the charging handle, move it to the other side. You still had the same controls, the same spongy trigger, the same bolt release. This cheek piece, this riser could be added or taken off to use with optics. And then they had the extended rail out here. But for the most part, it was a product evolved 5.56. And I don't think it did very well because it didn't last very long on the market. you're looking at another dead product. And honestly, I'm kind of glad it's gone, because of all the ones I've tried, this is the only one I kept just for historical purposes, because this thing was a god-awful mess. Now, I understand that many of you watching this video are going to say, but I have a 5.56 and it runs great. I have a 5.56R, it's the best gun I've ever owned. I have an XI, it's amazing. And I understand that. Everybody has different experiences. All I can tell you is I have a lot of experience with the guns I'm showing you here this afternoon. I've owned many different versions of them. I kept trying to give them chances, and I kept running into the same problems. So I understand that some of you have gotten very good guns and you're happy with them. Others have had experiences like mine. I think more people had bad experiences, which is why Sig was quickly evolving the product line, looking for something new. And they stumbled onto something that I think really changed the direction of Sig and their long arms, and that something was the MCX. In front of me, I have my early generation MCX. Now, I have a Midwest Industries handguard on it. I have a Griffin Armament muzzle device, but this is chambered in 5.56. This is a very early version of the gun. I bought it when it first came out. I've done videos on it, and I actually liked the gun quite a bit. I did make some comments that Sig made it more complex to disassemble than the AR-15, but aside from that, the gun, even this one, which was recalled in 2016, a mandatory recall was placed on the bolt carrier assembly, because you can go watch a Nut and Fancy video and his bolt carrier assembly and springs just completely destroyed themselves. Now, they said it was only applicable to the 300 blackout versions of the gun, but all 5.56 and 300 blackout guns were recalled. So there was a generational issue there right off the bat. So within the first year that the MCX was on the market, mine works great and continues to work great today. It does not have the recall updates done to it, but this gun continues to run just fine. It's accurate, it's reliable, it's ergonomic. I really like it, but there were problems with the early guns. Also, it's interesting to note with the MCX that within the first year of production, I believe, they significantly changed the gas systems on the guns. Now, you can't really see it here. Maybe if you look from the front, you have a user selectable gas regulator, okay? You have two positions. The original design, this is a very early 300 blackout, you'll notice that the gas system is different. This is what they called their self-regulating gas system. This was quickly changed in favor of the manual selectable gas selector. You'll also notice that on the 300 blackout and the 5.56, the ports and the gas blocks are in two different locations. All of this would change later with another evolutionary change of the MCX rifle. Now, what's funny is that when I bought my early gun, I desperately wanted the 300 blackout kit, and they were hard to find. Well, a viewer said, hey, I bought a complete kit, because at one point they sold the MCX with both barrels, and he said, I have a 300 blackout, I'll sell you. And I said, great, man, I'll buy it. So I bought his 300 blackout kit, and I called Sig customer support just to get the ring to put on the end of the barrel, because they have their proprietary taper cut to it for their suppressor line. And the customer support person on the other end of the phone said, can I have your serial number? I gave it to him. I told him, describe the 300 blackout kit. I was just trying to buy that ring, mind you. And he goes, oh, that barrel's not going to work with your rifle. And I said, why do you say that? He goes, well, they're incompatible. They made changes to the gas system and other things, and this barrel's not going to work in your 5.56 gun. I said, well, that's news to me, because I fired over 800 rounds through this barrel in this gun, and all I'm trying to do is suppress it. Can I buy the ring? So even Sig, their own customer support people, couldn't keep up with the rapidly changing changes to the gun design as it was happening just even in the first year of production of the MCX. But that does not detract from the fact that I still really liked the MCX and thought it had quite a bit of promise. And this gun has evolved yet again into another new product line called the MCX Virtus. Now let's take a look at the Virtus. So here's where things get really interesting once again with Sig products. Now, you guys have seen me talk about my Sig Rattler many, many times. I post about it on Instagram when I travel. I keep this thing next to my bed at home at night. This is my, if something goes bump in the night gun, I grab this quickly. It has an OSS suppressor on it, has an A&R design mount with a RMR and SB Tactical side folding brace, And this thing, despite its short barrel, is insanely accurate. Did a video with Mr. Guns and Gear when he came out to visit us here on the Mac range, and I was shooting targets 250 yards away with my RMR and shooting little tiny groups using supersonic ammunition. This rifle, or in this case this pistol, the rifle I'm going to show you here in a moment, is the evolutionary step forward from the original MCX. Now they call this one the Rattler, but it's very closely related to what we now know as the MCX Virtus. Rattler, absolutely love this gun. Quality through the roof, accuracy is incredible, just a phenomenal gun. I take this thing with me every time I travel, love it. Now we step into what we know as the Virtus. The Virtus is the next generation of the MCX, and there's a lot of stuff, a lot of features going on with this gun. Grand Thumb did a great breakdown of this firearm if you want to get down into the minutia of all of its different features. Today we're just going to kind of talk about it at a very high level. But what I want to say is that they've refined this gun to the point that I think this is probably one of the best military, law enforcement, civilian rifles currently on the market. It's reliable, it's insanely accurate. I would even go so far as to say that the Virtus is more accurate than my pet BCM. They're exquisitely accurate. Even the shorter barreled versions of them, when you get into the 11-inch pistols with the braces, again, they are minute guns with just standard federal ball 55 grain non-match ammunition. They shoot extremely well. They have adjustable gas systems on them. This one has the long rail on it. I think the long rail's a bit goofy. I wish it was cut back just a little bit, but this one has the 16-inch barrel on it. It disassembles just like the original MCX. The gas system has been refined yet again. You have replaceable, wearable components. So you have the ejection port and the forward assist, the buffer and the forward assist here. It appears that these are made out of polymer now, but again, they're intended to be replaced as they wear. You have pins, and this was a carryover from the MCX, but we all know how the T-handle on the AR-15 can start to wear on the receiver, on the notch that's cut into the aluminum receiver of the AR. Well, Sig has put steel roll pins in there for the latches to catch onto. It's that attention to detail that really sets the Virtus apart. The reliability, the light handiness, the modularity of the gun. It is multi-caliber, and the fact that it's incredibly accurate. Has, in this case, a side folding stock that also is adjustable. Let me find the button for length of pull. It's just one extremely well thought out, extremely well made firearm. So Sig has gone from amazing to not so amazing to world class once again with the Virtus. Let's do some shooting with this rifle. It's really, really impressive. We'd like to thank our friends over at Big Daddy Unlimited for making videos like this possible. Without their help, we couldn't do many of the videos that we produce. If you guys would like to support us, a great way to do that is to support Big Daddy, who supports us for 99 cents. You can become a member for 1 month for a trial and check them out. They're basically the Sam's Club of the online firearms and accessory world. If you would like to remain a member, you can get 20% off by going to militaryarms.org and clicking the link at the top of our blog. Click that link and stay a member for 20% off. So before we start shooting the Virtus, let's talk about the differences between the Virtus bolt carrier group versus the original MCX. Now, at a quick glance, they look pretty much identical, but in reality, they're quite different. There would be a number of different changes made to the bolt and carrier until we get to what we currently see in the Virtus. And the original system was user serviceable in that you could actually take the recoil springs off and their guide rods, disassemble the entire bolt. I could take this other one off. This is a piece of polymer, it's plastic. You can use your firing pin to push down here to release a detent, or it would release this arm. The arm does not pivot. And this is what I said, you know, Sig had actually made the disassembly of this bolt carrier group more complex than a standard AR-15, which they sought to simplify in the Virtus. You'll even notice that it has a cotter pin that's just like an AR-15, which you can take completely out to release the firing pin. To take the bolt out, has a cam pin just like an AR-15. Putting it back together could make you cuss. But this recoil system was prone to failure. Nothing Fancy had done a video where he showed his just completely disintegrating, and that's one of the reasons I suspect that Sig made changes that they made to the design. So when we get to the Virtus, you'll notice that the arm up here on top pivots upwards, and you'll also notice that it has the inclusion now of a firing pin safety that blocks the travel of the firing pin. That's a difference from that. It has a captive pin now. It's not using a cotter pin, it's captive. So now that when you take your firing pin apart or take your bolt carrier assembly apart, the firing pin comes out, that pin isn't easily lost in the field. And now there's pins, roll pins, holding the recoil assembly together, so it's no longer user serviceable. You can just spray it with gun scrub or something like that, then relubricate it. You probably don't want to take it apart. They've gone from plastic to now a cast piece of metal. So there's quite a few evolutionary changes, improvements to the design to make it much simpler and more robust. Real quickly, I want to show you the handguard on the Virtus and how it's changed from the MCX. So here you're going to see a couple of cutouts. Now these are for different gas systems, different length gas systems. And so they're just using one rail to, rule them all. Taking it apart is just like the original MCX, but this handguard fits extremely tight. And there's a little tab here in the front. So you really have, when it fits so tightly, these 1913 rails are such that there's going to be absolutely no movement in that handguard once you have it properly seated. Now you can see the gas system on this. Looking back at the earlier part of the video, you'll notice that this gas system, we have the port much further out on the barrel, and the gas system looks completely different. And here we have that user selectable 2-position gas regulator once again. This barrel also has that proprietary taper to it, but it does come with the ring in the box should you want to put just a regular suppressor on it that doesn't have a taper to it. Line it up, push it down, it'll pop into place, push your pin across, and the pins on this thing are super, super tight, so it's going to take the tip of a bullet to get it apart. It's not a problem. I'd rather have it tight and without slop. Again, just some Federal 55 grain ball. We have ambidextrous controls all around the rifle. Selector levers, we have ambi-mag releases, and over here we have our mag release, and then we just have the ping pong paddle style from the AR-15 bolt release, which is not ambi. That is not over here for anybody to hit with their right index finger, but it is extended, thus making locking the bolt open a lot easier versus having to push on the very bottom of a standard AR-15 type bolt stop. Charging it, it has 2 ambi releases, one on either side. On top I have just a standard MRO, and let's walk this sucker straight out to 250, or I guess from where we're sitting right now it's 200. I mean, effortless hits with this rifle. The recoil impulse on this thing is as smooth, maybe smoother than an AR-15 M4 style rifle. If you're used to shooting an M4 that's typically over-gassed, you're going to actually find that rifle recoils more than this. One thing I've always loved about the AR-15 M16 was that it kicks straight back into the shoulder. It's very controllable even on full auto. Now, I've never fired a Virtus on full auto, but just by shooting it in semi-automatic and feeling how perfectly gassed it is and how muted that recoil impulse is, this thing would be a dream to shoot on fully automatic. I mean, what a smooth shooting rifle. Has a standard port cover like an AR-15. You have the forward assist of, Some people love them, some people hate them. They like to silently check to see if there's a round in the chamber and silently close their bolt. Other people say just get rid of it, but it's minimalistic. This appears to be made out of polymer, and honestly, there's no weight there to be concerned with. They've also changed the pistol grip on it from the earlier MCX that had more of a XI style pistol grip to something that's more conventional. It looks more like an MOE style pistol grip. The stock, everything on it is just absolutely perfect in how it works. You'll notice that when the stock opens, it locks very firmly into place. It has it's borrowed kind of from the Galil / FAL style of locking. So it has kind of a V notch. So when it drops into that notch, it's self-tightening. So you're going to get no wobble or slop in the gun. This thing has no movement in it whatsoever. In case you can't tell, I'm in love with this thing. What many of you may not know, unless you're a Patreon, is that I play on the PS4, and I play a game right now called Call of Duty Modern Warfare. And my Rattler that I have sitting here right now is configured as what they call the M13 in the video game. I have my M13 configured pretty much just like the Rattler. I have it chambered in 300 blackout, have it with the short barrel, suppressor, reflex sight, and yeah, so I'm a game geek. And I actually even play a Rattler or the M13 in Call of Duty. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this Virtus video, or let's call it the evolution of Sig long arms video. And yeah, please don't take offense to anything I've said with regards to your 5.56 if you love yours, or your XI or whatever. These are opinions based strictly on our own experiences, both myself and Jason over the years shooting many different types of Sig long arms. But what I am proud to say and very happy to say is that Sig has an absolute winner with the current generation of Virtus Rattler type firearms. They're doing extremely well in sales despite their high price, and I can't say enough nice things about them. Guys, if you'd like to support us here at the Military Arms Channel, the best way to do that is to become a Patreon supporter. We don't take money from Sig. I don't even think Sig likes me, but that's not the point. We're supported by you, our viewing audience, and there's a link down below. Please follow that link and consider becoming part of our Patreon family. Also, right here on YouTube, underneath the video player, there's a little join button. Consider clicking that join button, checking out some of the perks, and becoming part of our YouTube membership program right here, again, on YouTube. And last but not least, please swing by and check out coppercustom.com. Guys, thanks for 12 years of support. Hope you're staying safe and well during this COVID-19 pandemic, and we'll talk to you guys soon. All right, guys, I know you're asking yourselves right now, does the Virtus 80s hip fire and does it bump fire? Well, let's find out. Yes, it does.